having difficult conversations is different than making every conversation difficult. Now, this may come as news for those of us in the ad biz, where taking even the simplest discussion and turning it into a series of 10-person meetings is kind of the norm. Now, what if, instead of taking simple conversations and making them painful, we took hard conversations and made them easier? How the hell can we do that? Well, Maureen Falvey, executive coach with strong training and coaching, and today's guest on the DesuckifyWork Podcast, has a few ideas. For starters, let's increase self-awareness. Who has time for that when you're juggling 37 projects at once? Well, it turns out that's when self-awareness is needed most. So you're not making that craziness even crazier with your managing and your helping. Let's also create psychological safety. Yes, I know that you might be giggling at that notion in the world of ad agencies, but seriously, it can and does happen, and should happen a lot more. And let's normalize feedback, not just on the work, but on how we work and how we're doing. And we should also normalize making that process both honest and kind. I honestly think Maureen is an amazing guest. I'm sure you will too. Okay, Maureen Falvey, welcome to the DesuckifyWork Podcast.
DJ, I'm so happy to be here.
I am so happy to have you here, Maureen. I think we're going to have a lot of fun stuff to get into. You have spent most of your time in the world of advertising, I think kind of working in it and now kind of working with it as a coach, and kind of mirrors my own experience. And I think there's some desuckifying that we could talk about that's needed there.
Love that language. That's so great.
Well, and before we dive into that good stuff, let's just give people a chance to get to know who you are. What's your story? What do you do for work, and how'd you come to be doing it?
Yeah, this work that I love. Before I started this, I was in advertising for many years. And toward the tail end of my career, I just started noticing that person that everybody wants to work with and for. What are they doing? Right? When work doesn't suck, what's going on, and how is that leader creating a reality where people are excited to come to work and excited to master stuff, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. And so I just got real curious about that. And so now I get to do that work full time as a coach and a trainer and a speaker to not just help people unleash their potential, but figure out what's in the way. And if you want to lead teams to greatness, you got to start with some work on your own. So I get to help people do that. I get to help people live and work on purpose instead of by accident. Like, it'd be one thing to say, I want to desuckify work, but I'm the person that is privileged to work with you to put your plan together. Not only make work suck less, but to increase the joy and the fulfillment and try to identify what's wrong and how can I move it. So it's just a tremendous bias for action, intentionality around making work amazing. Yeah,
I love that. I think that's what everybody wants, or at least wishes they could want. You know, I think some people don't even give themselves permission to imagine work as amazing because experience just hasn't lined up that way for them. And so they can't see a path. So maybe part of what we'll dive in today is hopefully cracking that door open a little bit for some folks who are sitting there going, work amazing. You know, I don't even know what that looks like. And then I do think there's this large amount of people, particularly in advertising, where they know it can be amazing because at times it has been, but oftentimes it's not. And so, like you said, like, what's in the way? You know, exploring a little bit of that, I think will be really interesting. What are the things that tend to be in the way, both in terms of what we're doing, because that's always the easiest change to make, and then maybe sort of systemically, are there some things that we can sort of chip away at by doing the work that we do and that others are doing in this space of working with individuals and teams and organizations to kind of get out of their own way, basically.
Right. Yeah. And I was just going to, just to comment on that. I think, I can't wait to get into that more, is that there are external barriers, which the client stressors or timelines or our broken meeting culture. I just ran a session on meetings that don't suck because they don't have to. It's like, meetings don't suck, bad meetings suck. But sometimes it's an internal thing.
Yeah.
A belief system that you don't deserve to be happy, a belief system that you have no right to speak up to your boss, even though they're making your life hell. How, and so I think looking at both of those can be really interesting as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we can dive into all of that. Before we go too deep into some of that, I'd love to kind of just round out your personal story a little bit. So for you, what role does work play in your own life?
I just went back to the beginning chapter. Now it is to facilitate joy.
Yeah, great.
It used to be to kick fear's ass.
Mm.
And I would get up in the morning and I was like, I'm going to fight and I'm going to fight and I'm going to fight. And it was exhausting. It was helpful sometimes to find my voice or to push back or make something happen. But I find I can definitely push back and make great things happen when I'm facilitating joy. And I think that for all of us, if certainly for me, if we can have that experience of work being a tailwind and advocate for what we need for it to feel that way. So my work, I only work now when there's joy involved. And that doesn't mean it's always easy.
Right.
In fact, anytime I ask someone to tell me about their best day at work, they talk about something that was hard. Right? So it's hard, but it's where I'm supposed to be. And I've done a lot of work to figure out where do I want to be used? And I mean that in the positive sense of the word. Where can I help? Where can I do things better? And I am finally at this wonderful, like being on the back nine in life, but I have clarity that I'm right where I'm supposed to be.
I love that. And I think, I think that's a lot of what people are searching for. It's like, how do I show up so that I get what I want?
Yeah.
And there was, the idea you talked about, the idea of like how I'm used the best, and in that language, the version of that word useful is one that I think is such an innate human need, right? Like to feel like we are of use to others, and how I think it's important for us to recognize that, both for ourselves and others. And then how do we act knowing that? Right.
Right. That's those two parts of EQ, right? One is the awareness. And the other is what do you do with that now that you know?
Yeah, exactly. I think we can dive into some of that too. I think question I like to ask, I'm curious, and you don't have to name names, but you have like a personal suckiest work experience or moment in work where you were feeling like, oh, these things are not lining up, I'm feeling blocked, like, and then on the follow-up of that, what did you learn from that?
It's all learning, isn't it? I have unfortunately many stories of being in that place.
Yeah.
And not knowing how to advocate for myself. One is just jumping to mind. It was Easter Sunday many years ago, and my parents had flown into town to visit me in New York City. We're from Ohio. I'm so excited to show them my big city. And my boss said, you'll do no such thing. You haven't finished filing. You haven't finished alphabetizing my files. And I said, is there any chance I could do it on Monday? And she said, no. And so I remember having to say to my parents, I have to be in the office. And it was Sunday, and I won't be able to be with you until I finish with the files. And there was screaming involved, and it just a lot of, what they all had in common was an insecurity in them that became toxicity for other people. Their own fear, their way of working it through was to see that reflected back in other people's faces. There are many examples of that, of people that just didn't, I call it a license to lead, but people that just hadn't quite gotten their license yet. And didn't realize the experience. I will give them the benefit of the doubt. I don't think any of those people knew the experience of being on the other side of them.
Yeah. That's the hardest part, right? Is like to be aware of what it's like to be on the receiving end of ourselves, requires a fairly high EQ, and, culturally you have to be comfortable with creating that culture of feedback, in both directions, in all directions, which if you're insecure, it's the last thing you want, right? Is people telling you, oh, you're not doing well,
Right. And I think if we all really got that we're not perfect, because newsflash, we're not, it was never the goal, and you're never going to get there. So you're going to be so tired. If we could just normalize asking for it, you are going to hear something. They're going to learn what you do well, which is great. Then you know what to keep doing, but you'll learn. Like I was just chatting with someone today. I was having a great conversation with someone on my team. I wanted to get the word. We were talking about EQ. And I said, isn't it interesting when you're on the other side of someone that has no idea what it is? And she was like, yeah, I had this boss that used to always in meetings, you weren't even finished with your sentence. And she would say, absolutely. Now that's not toxic. It's just disruptive and annoying and a lack of self-awareness. And imagine how great it would be if that person could say, hey team, how am I doing by you? What is one thing that I could do better? And you can say, well, I'm noticing you have this tendency to say absolutely, and it's just whatever the thing is for you, it's distracting. But people ask us, they're like, oh, I get to keep pretending I'm perfect if I never ask you who I really am. And I think our confidence increases if we can say it's painful for a moment. Oh my God, I didn't realize I say absolutely after everything. But then most of the people, I'm sure you see this as well, are walking around or working, having no idea how they're doing. What a way to sap your confidence. And in the creative industry, your output is going to be not what it could be.
Yeah. It's so interesting, like what you pointed out there, that most of us are walking around not really knowing the impact that we have on people, and maybe good or bad, and you mentioned this idea. It's kind of comfortable in a way to be like, I am perfect, I'm great, and just to create that story for yourself. But you're not growing, and therefore the work is not getting better, and your teams are not growing because you're not showing up how they need you to be showing up, except in your head.
And you're not modeling for them.
Right.
What I would hope is their reality, which is ask, always ask. Yeah. Always know the good, the bad, and the ugly, and then grow. Yay.
Well, speaking of the good, bad, and ugly, another question I like to ask is, and maybe we can kind of put the lens mostly on the advertising industry, since that's where we're both from. If there was a suck meter in terms of work is horrifically awful to wonderful, like where is it, sort of broadly speaking, do you think, in the industry right now?
Oh, just thinking through my coaching sessions and what's coming up. I think it's getting a little better. I think no one was talking about EQ when I started in advertising. Yeah. You could throw chairs at people. You could take a baseball bat to a couch. These are real things that happen. You could threaten someone's life. You could do all of those things and go back to work the next day, and there was no consequence. Right? But I think there are consequences now. I think that we help people with coaching. I work with a lot of people that someone might have called, a monster years ago, right? But they really aren't. They don't yet. We'll get to that in a second, but I think it's gotten better because we're getting help for these people. We're not tolerating things if they won't accept the help. And I think we're doing more training, helping people be self-aware, realizing that leading doesn't mean you have more stripes and you can tell people what to do. It's privilege. Yeah. So get your act together and help these people grow. Yeah. So we like Simon Sinek and Brene Brown and all these, Seth Godin, all these people helping us lead now, if only we'd listen. And I think we're starting to. So versus, or when you go over the decades or whatever, I would say we're headed toward the happy end. I would say we're getting there. And we're also learning how to advocate for ourselves and say to someone, hey, that when you spoke over me in that meeting, didn't really work for me. Right. Let's talk about that. I really want to feel heard. So we're doing a little bit better with communication, EQ, self-awareness, remain hopeful.
Yeah. I like the hopefulness. I agree. I think I'm not sure where it currently is on the scale. I do think there are forces pulling it towards the better side of the scale. I think what I hope to do, and I know the work that you're already doing is contributing to this, and I just kind of want to amplify that so that people know there are people like you out there that can be helping with is to, be a part of the solution with the work that I'm doing and helping just people see that we can get there. It's not going to be easy, but there's some work and some steps we can do that will move us there. I think we're kind of between like awareness and action right now. Like there's a fair amount of awareness when you mention those names of Seth Godin, Brene Brown, Simon Sinek, and others. Like there's a lot of banter about what a better work world looks like in our business in particular. I think it's like time to follow up on the banter with a little more implementation.
Agreed.
That's kind of where my brain is at. But I agree. There are definitely places that are moving in the right direction. And I think maybe we can touch on some of the spots where there's some room for improvement and talk through some of the ways people could continue to move that needle closer.
Sure.
I think that'd be fun to kind of just dig into. I want to come back to the point you made earlier about this license to lead, because I think that may be at the core of a lot of this. And I think, as I hear that, what I hear is a lot of us get thrust into leadership positions without necessarily knowing what it means to be a leader, knowing that it's a privilege and knowing the impact that we have. And therefore we bring all our stuff with us, the baggage, the like, I think you've mentioned like the bad boss that that was our model. And so we're just kind of replicating it, the personal issues, and we're thrusting them on our team. Mm-hmm. And tell me if this is right. A license to lead would be like helping people get a little handle on that so that when you're tasked with helping to lead a team, you're not throwing that at them. You're finding ways to put good stuff towards them. And the license is like, you do that work, you get your license. Is that is that right?
Yeah. And you've got we do a lot of leadership essentials training.
Yeah.
So it's having difficult conversations and EQ and executive presence and being able to turn toward the heat, all of these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
To persuade, influence, all of that, the gravitas.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's also a step before that one, which is like know thyself. Know what you're bringing to this experience, because I can give you all the training in the world, but what I want to add to that is your self-awareness around your stories and your belief systems. I come from a family of therapists, so I can't not know what I know about humans and how we bring all that crap with us unless we clean it up. If you have a belief system let's even say as an employee, a contributor, that you're not good enough. You had a history of someone shouting, even at home, screaming at you a lot, telling you were garbage. You will bring that into your work experience and find yourself surrounded by people who tell you the same thing, because that's your narrative and that's your belief system. And until you want to interrupt it and grab a different one, right? Now, as a leader, you may say, well, every boss I had treated me like crap, and so I'm going to do the same thing.
Right.
But I think we need to figure out I see a lot of people that are triggered at work, a lot of people that, if you have a belief system, no one ever listens to me. And then somebody in their enthusiasm cuts you off in a meeting, you're going to freak out. Right? So we need to first say, geez, I'm really triggered when people speak over me. It's very important for me to be heard. Guess what? You just identified it. What does Brene Brown say? Name it to tame it. So that's the first thing. I'm like, I've got a real issue with this. The second one is tell your team, hey guys, I want us to work with gals. So we're working on that language. Me too. I want us to work well together. And so I'm going to share with you a little bit about me, a little bit about my style, the things that kind of piss me off. You don't have to step in it. You won't find out the first time. I'm telling you now. And by the way, share with me yours. What is a good day for you? What upsets you? So I can be a little more conscious around it. So the license is just about saying, I don't think we should be thrust on people. Without thinking about who we are, what we want to bring, who we want to be with these people, and what might get in the way. What from the past, which they do in therapy, right? Might creep into this that doesn't belong. And then what do I need to do about that?
Yeah. I mean, I think as you say all of that, I know for me, like 20 different work experiences are popping up, both in terms of my own behavior and the behavior of others. And I imagine lots of others are feeling that. So I think I think that's a message that will resonate with a lot of people. My creative part of my brain is sitting there going, I want to design a license that we actually give people. Like, what is the license?
I love that part of your brain. I don't have that part.
I'm like, what does that look like? You know, is it your photo?
I keep picturing fishing.
I love it.
Like fishing.
It could be like that, like a game and wildlife license or something. Or like, I was picturing kind of like a driver's license, but like you get like a sort of a superhero makeover when you get your license, a cape or the thing or whatever. I don't know. I digress. But I think the point behind maybe some of that is that I want people to embrace the idea that like it's exciting if you become somebody who can be a good or great leader. Like the ability to impact people as a leader, like you said, it is a privilege, and to be good at it, I mean, that's pretty awesome. I mean, like you suddenly have this ability to make some of the changes that we often talk about. You know, you go on the Fishbowl and you see all the banter, and you go on to LinkedIn and there's, you know, and I get it. There's lots to complain about, but at the end of the day, what can we do? And I think showing up as better leaders, that's what we can do. And then that models the behavior that everyone throughout the organization can follow. So,
yeah.
Nice.
And, you know, you talk about your beautiful creative mind. I think the other thing that's changed is making the dial go a little bit toward the positive is we're learning how the brain works. Mm-hmm. No one knew that when I started in advertising. Yeah. You cannot create if you don't have some sense of safety, if you don't have some sense, okay, so what does it take to be creative? We need to, like a child on a playground, we need to be able to play. We need to be able to access play and wonder and questions. When you're scared, none of those things can happen. At best, you can deliver what you think your boss wants or what the client just screamed at you and told you to go do. That's not your best work. So we're understanding now that our way of showing up, whether it's toxic or our own insecurities, gets in the way of the very ideas that we were to create.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting, right? Because again, I can picture some of that feeling in certain places I've worked. And, you know, I wonder about how leaders can create that space and that room for play and for fun. I mean, I think this is one of the things that I hear the most, particularly from creatives in advertising is, you know, it's funny. Somebody mentioned to me, like, I got into this because I didn't want a real job. Meaning, like, this is not a quote unquote real job. It's different. It's fun. It's creative. It has sort of the trappings of a corporate job, but yet the things we do are very different than if you talk to somebody who worked in a lot of other places. And what I think underneath all of that is, meaning there is time to play and have fun and joke around and connect to the people we're with in a way that just like fosters that creative ability. And so much of a lot of the business is becoming so fast and so routine in a way, meaning a lot of the outputs can kind of feel kind of routine in terms, doesn't leave a lot of space for that play. What are you noticing with some of the folks you're talking to? And is there anybody that you're seeing who's finding a way to navigate that and create the space that people need?
Yes. I am seeing some people that, you know, because it can be done. It's not, you know, it's, I don't think it's that mysterious. I think a couple of things need to happen. The time pressures are real. Yeah. We didn't invent those and they've gotten worse. Yeah. And so when people are stressed and there's a time pressure, it also takes a tremendous hit on creativity. So we need, as creative people or account people or whoever's working with the client, to be able to help clients understand how we create. I was always so surprised, you know, I got to watch my beautiful creative people. They would watch them, how their process. They would go out and they'd take a walk, or maybe they grab a glass of wine, or they do whatever. You can't force it. You really do need the time. And then you need to say, like, you know, at 10 p.m., this is the greatest idea ever. And then you wake up in the morning, like, oh, that was garbage. Let me start over, which is fine. It's part of it. It's part of it. But clients think that it's just like when they go to do their planning or they get to make their numbers add up. It's not like that. We do need time. Like that saying, a fire roars when there's space in between. If you shove all the logs on, it snuffs out. You need that time for me to bring you something I'm proud of. So I think we need a little more time to breathe and to push back and to set some boundaries around that. That was what it's a 12-week timeline to suddenly 10, and then it's 8. And I know producers suffer all the time. They're on the back end trying to make this miracle happen because we didn't get enough time to begin with. So I think it's a pushback, but while you were talking about this, I had a thought that I want to share and I never have before.
Okay.
When we talk about play, if you look at kids on a playground, they're not really competing with one another. They're just in the moment, and they're trying to do their personal best, and they might be going across the monkey bars or whatever. Maybe they're playing together. There may be a competitive spirit, but there's no winner on a playground. That we don't close the playground and we're like, Bobby won today at the playground.
Right.
There's a competitive spirit that I think is really destructive, sometimes with creative people. And I think that agencies and creative places have fueled it because they think they win when they do that. They make us compete against one another.
Yeah.
But what's happening is the CCO or the ECD, the senior creative person, now someone reporting into them who has an incredible idea. And instead of feeling like, great, they say, well, when am I going to get my award? Or what if this person's better than I am? And instead of, if we all looked at like, this thing is something we're going to polish together, if we really had a creative spirit and really did win together, a sense of win-win, this is our award, this is our whatever, then we would be willing to bring someone our stuff and let someone polish it and say, geez, you're really great with humor and I'm not. Can you take this idea and make it funnier?
Yeah.
You do whatever. So I think play is when we're less self-conscious and less competitive, but I see us creating an environment of being very self-conscious and not good enough or competing with someone else over there. And I just think, I don't know. What do you think about that?
I love that insight. I think it's very true. I think it's gotten a little better over time. Meaning, I think back 15, 20 years ago, and it felt like every job was a creative duke out kind of environment. And it wasn't always that way. Like, and maybe partially because I didn't want it to be that way, but I felt like there was definitely more collaboration. I think some of that honestly is a credit to younger people coming up who don't have the same mindset. And so you try to lean into that and embrace the idea that like, yeah, let's create a shared Google Deck and let's give people opportunities to dive in and contribute. I think the challenge is, and I think what you're pointing out, you mentioned the awards, there's promotions, there's the fact that we are judged 98% by the portfolio we create.
Yeah.
Like, that incentivizes the hold on to, protect the idea, don't let anyone else's hands touch it because it's my idea that will hopefully either get me promoted to creative director or get me the job over at that hot shop that I keep reading about, or get me the trip to Cannes to drink some rosé and celebrate with my friends. Like, those incentives are real. And we need to create at least parallel incentives that are more along the lines of what you talked about, that recognize the value of collaboration, of sharing ideas. I have this brilliant idea. Yeah, I want somebody to help me make it better without the fear that I somehow lose my attachment to that idea. And I don't know what the answer is because I think these are hard questions, but I think
we're just getting started. Yes,
worthy questions, right? And I think agencies, I think they're wrestling with it a bit, but I wonder if there might be a more structured way for agencies to manage this and think about how. Because I don't even think it just affects creatives. I think if you're on the team that's working on the project as an account person, a strategist, a producer, you get a little bit of that territorialness, and then if somebody else pokes their head in, it's like nope. Because I think the incentives are there to a degree for everyone, but they're fierce in the creative department. So I would love to figure out how we can expand upon this thinking to help creative leaders and departments recognize all the value that contributes to a more collaborative and truly creative environment. And like you said, like play that is, yeah, there might be a little competitive spirit in there around like, I want to be the fastest across the monkey.
So that we can get,
But it's not like, oh yeah, like you said, Bobby won the playground today. And right now that's what we're doing. We're saying Bobby won this and then Susie won this. And like, that's what we're doing. So of course, if I'm a creative, why wouldn't I behave towards those incentives,
Yes.
Really tricky.
CEOs that are doing it well. When I think about, there's something I'm always listening for, a little bit more even when I'm on a Zoom, but certainly in a room. But like if I'm doing a training session, it's the CCO that brings that sense of playfulness, his or herself. And they'll laugh a little bit, right? Because that makes people feel safe. We're getting out of it. It's like a sense of silliness. Yeah. When people are willing to tease one another, I know the relationship's strong. When that CCO is willing to be a little bit vulnerable, and when people are helping one another, I notice sometimes in the chat, people are like, oh, this book might help you or whatever. I love when that happens. But it kind of goes back to the license to lead. What I know for sure about those CCOs, because some of them I also coach, is that they've done their work.
Yeah.
They've done their work and they are guided by lifting others in that leadership role. Their best day is when someone on their team brings them a great work, or they win a pencil, or they win some award, right?
Right.
So yeah, I think seriousness can be pretty dangerous. I think we could use a little more laughter at work. Yeah.
And I think that connects to so many of the challenges that we have. I was thinking about, before we started this conversation, I'm like, where are the areas where the advertising industry does kind of suck, or at least is not as good as it could be? And like some of what we've just been talking about are some of those areas. But I think at some point you mentioned communication. And this is the one that always just baffles me, right? Because we are in the communications business. We're very good at crafting communication on behalf of clients, but sort of real time in the moment in our processes, like cross-departmental, even intra-departmental, we're pretty bad at it in my experience. And that like ramps up the stress and ramps up the lack of ability to be playful. And it even creates a lot of wasted time. We're inefficient communicators and we have too many meetings. And I think, you talked about how there are maybe ways that meetings don't have to suck. Like what have you seen that can help agencies get better at communicating so that they create more space for the fun and the creativity and the ability for people to be more supportive and collaborative?
Yeah. I think at the center of all of that is trust, TJ. I think it's when there's a relationship even between trust and communication, meaning the more I know you, and I know I can give you the benefit of the doubt, I understand you, the less we really need to communicate, because I can fill in some blanks. No leader should be meeting the same amount with everyone on their team, because those have different tenure, they have different needs. So I think that when there's trust, then I can communicate with you my joys, my upsets. I know it's going to be okay. You've created enough safety for me to say what works for me and what doesn't. And it is true we're in the communication industry, but the way that creative agencies communicate is through ideas. There isn't a ton of tension. There isn't a word, when we get into giving feedback or having a difficult conversation or wanting to advocate for ourselves, there's a little bit of tension in there. There's a little bit more at stake, maybe. It's very personal. And I think the only thing that's different about creative industries versus like attorneys or financial people or whatever is that there's maybe a little more ego. We are tied to that idea. But I can tell you, because I work across industries now, no one's good at it. Nobody is a great communicator. Everybody's scared to death to talk to their boss or the client or their coworker because they're chewing gum loudly in the cubicle next to them and it's bothering them. There's this great quote from Susan Scott. She wrote a book called Fierce Conversations. And in it, she says, our work, our relationships, and our very lives succeed or fail gradually and then suddenly, one conversation at a time.
Mm.
I actually think it's the conversations that we're not having.
Yeah.
See something like the New York subway camp, but we don't say something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, I know that I'm annoyed, or I know that thing didn't work for me, or I know I need to give feedback to someone on my team, but I don't want to hurt them.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're going to freak out, or maybe they probably already know, or wait a minute, it's not performance review season. I don't need to do that till October.
Right.
So I think if we could, let me answer your question. That was a long, I want to kind of get it out there because I want to normalize the fact that it's everywhere. Mm-hmm. But if we can do more upfront in communication, this is what I mean. Once the upset's happened or whatever has happened, it's uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And humans don't love being uncomfortable. We really don't like that. Our little brain says, I want to be comfortable and safe again. So let's not have that conversation.
Yeah.
When we're doing our onboardings or if we could do a relationship reset with someone we've been working with for years.
Yeah.
And talk about our style, our pace, our triggers.
Yeah.
And then create a little contract with everyone. Normalize feedback. Let's have feedback Fridays or whatever it is. So that when, let's say you're going to give me feedback, TJ, I'm in a state of readiness for it. Right. You've normalized, you said on Fridays, that's what we do here. And then you create a little contract and you say, people like us do things like this. Here's how we're going to communicate. When we say something, we're going to say something.
Yeah.
We say false harmony is not the goal. Constructive conflict is. I want it to be noisy in here. That's normal here.
Yeah.
And then we ask the really important question. When things get funky, what will we hold ourselves accountable for doing? And when everyone says, I'm going to say something because you matter to me. Yeah. Then the culture starts to change. And we do communicate because for no other reason, we set the expectation that we would. Yeah. Using hope as a strategy, or geez, I hope I'm brave in the moment. You're not going to be. Right. So you make a commitment to another human about who you're going to be around feedback and conflict and creativity and time management and all these other things. It's why coaching works. I'm just someone's I'm someone's accountability partner. Yeah. And so now you've built in expectations, accountability. And then we're going to hold one another accountable if we don't do that thing. Hey, I noticed it's been a few months and we haven't had a chance to talk about how I'm doing. Yeah. Contract. So I think we need to get ahead of it and say, how do we want to behave? Because our brain is going to want to do what it's always done. And we've got bad habits going. And so we just need to interrupt that and set some commitments to one another about how we're going to work. So that we can be creative and we can play and we can experience joy. But I think we need a contract up front.
I really like that. And it reminds me, relatively speaking, how inconsistent the onboarding process often is at an agency. Like it can range from, here's your desk, your email's set up, go, to, maybe a little bit of like, hey, there's a day of stuff. But I've never really experienced what you're talking about, which is like, to me, really at the root of when people talk about culture. It's how do we work together? What are the expectations that we have for each person here? What are the commitments? How can we be accountable to each other? And having people align and agree to that upfront. And then, like you said, maybe at certain points, there's a point where you reconnect to that and commit to those things. Because if you don't, then those things just happen sort of haphazardly. And we develop our own systems, and my system doesn't work compared to your system, compared to this person. I don't know what that person is committed to. They don't know what I'm committed to. And it becomes kind of that chaos that I think a lot of people feel sometimes in agencies. And it was a really interesting insight about like, we're really good about communicating through ideas and concepts, but these kind of deeper, more meaningful, like personal level communication. Who are you? Who am I? What is my work style? What do I need to succeed? What do you need to succeed? I think, and maybe this is a little bit of a output of the fact that some people don't think of advertising as a real job. It's just this fun, chaotic mashup of crazy people who get to do fun stuff, that we don't think we need to do the groundwork, of setting expectations, making commitments, and being accountable. So I don't know if that's true, but that's just what showed up for me. And I think how different things would be if you had that groundwork. And then when the tough conversations come up, you're expecting them.
Yes.
You're inviting them, because you've set the culture up that way. I think that would make a huge difference. Are you noticing anybody fully embracing that in your work?
100%.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes what I'm doing in coaching or in training is I'm giving them tools. We practice some of them in the sessions, but then they go into the real world and they do more of that. And they report back, oh my God, this person I couldn't stand before, my difficult person, is now my best friend. We realize how much, because it's 93% of conflict is due to misunderstanding and miscommunication.
Yeah.
Especially when there's so many people, they have a style where they do their best deep work alone. But if you don't have a conversation around that, someone else will misunderstand and they'll be like, what a jerk. Bob's not a team player. I keep using the word Bob. He's not a team player. That is not true. Bob will come back with his great ideas once he's had quiet, but a brainstorming where stuff's flying all around is not how you're going to get the best work out of that person. Yeah. So we misunderstand. We say, and that's the other thing, is that we're so certain. We're so certain. If people could be just 10% more curious, I wonder what I'm missing. I noticed Bob does a lot of work alone. Seems like a jerk. Well, maybe he's not. I wonder what I'm missing. Let me go ask.
Yeah.
So it's like the Ted Lasso, be curious, not judgmental, but it's kind of true. Yeah. Like if we could just be a little bit more like, I wonder what's going on here. I wonder what's going on for that person. I think that could bring more joy and less conflict.
I agree. Well. I think that curiosity is the key to so much of this. And like you said, it's just that one question deeper of like, why is Bob like that too? Even the same wording, but different phrasing. Like, why is Bob like that? Like it can be this frustration, hands on hips to like, why would he be like that? What might motivate that? Yeah, let me go talk to him. And then, I know in coaching, there's also assessments and tools that we can use that can really create some of that awareness about, what your work style is, what motivates you. And I think there's so much that can be unlocked just by exposing people to those kinds of tools, because then suddenly you have the language to have the conversations and go talk to Bob and everyone else and go, okay, yeah, I've learned some things about what makes people tick, what does make you tick, and then, or you could say, here's what makes me tick. I really like connecting with people to collaborate and influence people. I'm kind of thinking of DISC in my head and using like the high I is a little more that way, where somebody might be like, well, I kind of want to just get things done. I want to get things done. It's like, okay, how does that show up for you? And how can I connect to that for you, knowing that that's not my primary driver, but I know that matters to you. So how can we find that space? I think there's so much good conversation that can happen there. And the other thing that shows up when you mention curiosity, that's such a precursor to creativity to me, right? Like all kinds of creativity, not just making ads, but just thinking creatively about solving problems, right? Is to be very curious about what is the problem, what's behind the problem, what is driving it. And that's actually like, I think about the ad industry and how remarkably creative we are on behalf of our clients in solving their problems. And I think I would love us to turn that energy inward more. I mean, I think about what I'm focused on with the coaching, it's like, it's like, how can we get creative around the challenges we see around the office? Like, how can we get creative about making feedback work better, making communication work better, helping people with different work styles work well together and work the best. Do you see folks embracing a more creative mindset once you get a chance to kind of introduce them to kind of the tools and the thinking of a coaching mindset?
I do. And I think it takes practice.
Yeah.
I think we've been trained and conditioned to know instead of ask. The average, I almost gave it away. Well, I'll just ask you, at what age do you think our curiosity peaks?
That's a really good question. I mean, 5, something to say.
Right on, age 4. A 4-year-old asks 300 questions.
Yeah.
every day.
Yeah.
And then you get to the teen years and it drops to about 20. And then you get to grown up. And I think we ask, I think it was between 4 and 6 questions a day.
Wow.
And so what is that going to do to creativity? But imagine if you even had, maybe this sounds silly, maybe it isn't, but you had curiosity day at work. And all we're going to do is pretend like we're 4 and ask why, or say, start every conversation with, I wonder. You know, I mean, imagine if, I'm sure you saw enough people at work over the years that were really upset about something.
Yes.
And then we would get really upset about, you stole my idea. No, you did. You're an asshole.
Absolutely.
Is someone who is experiencing a big upset to be curious about it and be like, you seem really upset. Help me understand what's going on.
Yeah.
And the person, by the way, that is also how we deal with toddlers when they have a temper tantrum. Really upset, but it's the same for grown-ups.
Yeah.
And they're like, shit, man, someone sees me, someone cares, someone hears me, and they move into their parasympathetic nervous system pretty darn quickly.
Yeah. I felt it even as you asked the question, like I was like, my nervous system was adopting the attitude of being stressed by problem as you posed it. And then you asked that question and I immediately felt my, like that, the anxiety around that situation drop. So it's like, it works even in a hypothetical.
Right. Because because that person is now moving into wonder. I wonder why I did have such a big reaction.
Yeah.
Was it working? Yeah, you did, but we don't know yet. So, so I think the curiosity piece, which is it can be so hard. No one says, hey, you're going to get more when you ask more questions, but you are.
Yeah.
You are, as a salesperson or a creative person or anyone else, you will get to something pretty amazing by asking just a few more questions.
Yeah, I fully agree. I feel like that's like definitely like pounded in as the lesson when you're learning how to be a coach, that it's all about the question, right? And which is why I feel like that coaching mindset is like the gift that all leaders deserve, right? Is embrace the coaching mindset. You don't have to be a coach, but like the idea that you can get to so much more through questions rather than, as you mentioned before, by being certain, you know?
Yeah.
Pause. Like even if you said, I'm going to give myself another minute before I feel certain about this.
Yeah. Ooh, that's good. Like a time. I think that's, we actually have a training on a coach approach to leadership, which is that. And it's just the shift from, if managing people is about telling them something, coaching them is about asking, and just a little bit more of that curiosity. I am just plugging my computer in. But, you know, and then right now you and I are being theoretical, which is great because it's a great thing. But if we want to give someone an action to take, what day is today's the 20, whatever, doesn't matter. But let's say to wherever you are, you're listening to this on whatever day of the week. Tomorrow, whatever that is for you, ask one more question. Yeah. Than you asked today. Challenge yourself that when you're triggered, you will move into curiosity instead and see what happens differently. Yeah. That'd be great. I like that. I like this simple experiment. That's what that feels like to me, right? Yeah. It's like, just going to try something and I'm not going to make it hard. I'm not going to suddenly become this perfect version of somebody who just asks all the right questions at all the times, but just like one more, you know? Yeah. And I think that's a good model just for how we can all grow and how we can all develop ourselves and then hopefully develop as leaders and develop the team who are with us to just try little experiments and try something. So if you hear something like, oh, that's interesting and it's kind of theoretical, just go, I'm going to take one little slice of that and do that and see. And maybe it doesn't work for me and that's fine. You move on and you keep embracing the experimental mindset though. I think that's part of that curiosity too, right? Yeah. I'm smiling because my theme song is that Shakira song, Try Everything. Just try stuff. Some of it'll work and then you'll keep doing it. Some of it won't. But like, I even like that sort of playful, curious, let's just try stuff. I love it. I think that's a great for a creative person as well. That sense of playfulness. And let's give it a shot. So on that note, if we were waving a magic wand and kind of creating this fully desuckified work where joy and being,
in love with what you do each day shows up, what would you see when you waved that magic wand?
I would see a group of people smiling because they are aware, they are self-aware, they can regulate themselves. So in any situation, they can know what their triggers are and decide to react or not react. A group of people who see one another, right? And those people matter to them.
Yeah.
And that really get that it is so trite. I see it at the top of every offsite, we're better together, but we really are.
Yeah.
We are not meant to do this work of work and life alone. And as it relates to creativity, I see an exponential benefit when we do that good work together. I see our confidence grow. I see the joy grow. I see, connectedness drives the confidence as well. People, even if you're someone who likes to do the work alone, we benefit from the collective experience. Belonging is in there in Maslow's hierarchy because it matters. Right?
Absolutely.
So the self-aware people doing great work together with a sense of play, in a sense that we all matter and we're going to get better together, is what is the opposite of suck? Is we say joy is a joyful experience at work. And that's, I quote my mom a lot, but I have a great quote from her on the question you just asked that summarizes it well. She's a therapist, and she says, the purpose of life is not to be pushing a cart uphill with your nose the whole time. It's to be in it riding. And when we create the conditions at work that you and I have been having a conversation around, that's the cart. That's the go. That's the tailwind. That's the joy. And there may be other people in the cart with you. That's even better. But I think that is what creates it. And that's the experience that I know both of us want for people at work. I want people to wake up. I can't wait.
Yeah.
People and do this work and grow and make some mistakes and learn from those and play.
Yeah. I love that. I think I can picture that world. I think I've sort of been in it for brief moments. But as you and I break this down, if we've all had those moments, maybe the goal is, what action can I take to have one more of those? Two more of those each week, because it's going to be a snowball and it's going to keep coming. You're going to keep getting better and better at it. And by the way, as you're doing that, all of you wonderful leaders out there, guess what you get to become? First of all, you're happy, but you're the person everybody wants to work with and for, because you represent joy, creativity, safety, right? The best ideas. I want to work on that person's team. Yeah. And that would be pretty fulfilling. I absolutely love that. One of the last questions I always like to ask is, I use sound effects a lot on the show, and they kind of represent my sense of joy and playfulness. And I've invited people to contribute to that. Do you have a sound effect that you could add to this experience?
It's probably a sound effect that would go with being in the cart riding, but it's just this whoosh.
I love that. I feel the energy and the freedom and the joy in all of that. Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, thank you for that. It will show up somewhere in this episode in the beginning, probably. And the last thing I just ask for people is, where can people find you so they get to know more about what you're doing and how you're helping to make work more awesome for people?
Oh, thank you for asking that question. Everyone at Strong Training and Coaching, we love the work that we do. We love to do more of it. So you could reach out at markstrongcoaching.com, whether it's coaching that you need, group or individual, training sessions, a speaker at your next offsite. We have sat where you're sitting, and we get it. And we want you to experience all the joy in the world as you do that good work. And we are here to help in any way. So thank you for asking.
That's awesome. I hope lots of people check that out. I have spent time on the site. I've talked to Mark. I've obviously talked to you. You're all wonderful people doing wonderful work. And I think it's important work in an industry that really needs all of our best to be able to be what we're truly capable of. And I think we're moving in that direction, as you said, but let's keep it going.
Absolutely. Thanks, TJ.
Thanks, Maureen. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in to the DesuckifyWork Podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please like, share, rate, review, subscribe, or consider blasting our theme song from a giant speaker on top of your car as you drive around a busy neighborhood. A huge thanks to Maureen for bringing a deep understanding of culture and leadership to the show and a bias for action. You can follow Maureen on LinkedIn and check out Mark Strong Coaching and Training at markstrongcoaching.com. I have a pretty strong site as well, and my Substack newsletter ain't too shabby either. Check them both out if you'd like to learn more about turning your agency into an amazing place to work. Want to chat? Let's set up a free half-hour Desuckified discovery session. Bye, everyone.